My name's Nico and I have two mums. I live in Glebe and I work with bikes. It's in sales, been working in sales the past couple of years. At the moment it's bikes. I just got back from overseas travelling again. I've done a lot of that. I've just sort of stopped doing that now. My biological mum was trying to get pregnant with me for a couple of years before she met my other mum. That's how I sort of refer to them, as biological and non-biological, is how I've sort of done it. So yeah, she was trying to get pregnant for a while. I believe she tried stuff like through clinics, that kind of thing. And then so she met my mum in Vancouver, I believe. And then 6 months later, there I was, and that was done privately in the end. So my brother Ralph was born through a different sperm donor. A lot of people have asked whether that's something that creates a space between us, and I certainly don't think so. When you're raised with someone, they're your brother, and I think brotherhood goes much deeper than blood. I know my brother's donor, for example, had made it clear that it was going to be an anonymous thing and never wanted any contact and stuff. That wasn't made clear with mine, and so yeah, for sure, I've got a bit of curiosity about my donor, but it's purely from a genetic point of view. I definitely don't feel like there's a hole in my life where there should have been a man or anything like that. So when I was at school, me and Ralph were the only ones who had lesbian parents at that time, but I'd never found it was a big issue in the Blue Mountains because of looking at it now, it has a very large gay lesbian community, and I think that certainly helped us being in Lawson. Even though we were the only ones with lesbian parents, there was a lot of people around who were gays, lesbians. I don't really remember a sit-down conversation about, Nico, you have two mums and it's different to how other people do it. I imagine there was a point in my younger years where it was explained, but because of those two environments, Petersham and then the Blue Mountains, that were just so sort of mixed and so great about it, that it just, to me, all I did was grow up and had that normal thing. It never felt like I was super different. The first time I ever felt I ever sort of got a negative response to that side of growing up was when I moved to Sheffield. Now, and I think it has again something to do with the age as well. I think that was the thing. So Petersham, the Blue Mountains, young people, and suddenly I was in like high school. So I left Australia halfway through year 6 and went straight into year 8. Because of the way the years worked and stuff. Couldn't finish off year 6, year 7 was full for some reason. So I was surrounded by a lot of older kids who had a lot more questions and had enough time to be raised by other people's ignorances and stuff like that. I'd also always been really comfortable just saying, it's like, yeah, I got two mums, and it's just always a story by that point that I was very comfortable telling. And I remember like the first time I told it, and I remember the reaction. It was like, they're not cool with this. And by the time I really sort of figured out that it probably wasn't the best thing to tell people, it was kind of a bit too past that point, so everyone sort of knew, and like, I'm not saying that it was absolute harassment all through high school, but it was enough ammunition for people to use when they wanted to hurt you, I suppose. So the way I dealt with it at the time was that I was only going to be there for a year. I knew I was leaving. I knew I didn't have to be there forever, and it was really quite a tough year. They do things a bit differently over there in the high school. It's very physical, like confrontations are dealt with that way. In my sort of teenage years after I finished high school, I went traveling, and I started meeting a lot of people my age, and by that point it was a bit cooler, and I found it a story very handy to me in talking to girls, talking to women. It's something very interesting. Like I think some people might think it's, what's interesting about me? What can I say to pick myself up, I suppose? And I just always knew it was a very interesting story. It was a very different story, and I used it to set myself apart from anyone else. Very much helped with talking to girls, I suppose. Both my parents, really strong women. There's absolutely, like, now there's nothing I won't go to them for, because like, one's a doctor, one's a lawyer. There's very few questions that they can't answer between them. Being raised by two mums has made me very on side about gay marriage, for one thing. I think that's something I feel really strongly about. especially in comparison to all the other countries that are doing it, like America and Ireland and all these places you wouldn't maybe necessarily think about it. The Kiwis beat us to it as well. And it's ridiculous. Like Australia, to me, has been this really, diverse country that's full of different cultures, and the fact that we don't allow, gay and lesbian marriage is awful. So yeah, when I was 18, I got my first tattoo, and it says mums. I have it on my back. So I remember actually a guy showed up to a rugby team with mum written across his chest. And I just thought, that's quite cool, and I just instantly thought, oh, I could do that. Put the plural in, that'd be funny. Not a joke, but it was something that was definitely funny, and I did it to be funny. And then as the sort of years went on, and I sort of went out into the world with that tattoo on, and I loved what it represented, and it was people. I was suddenly introducing myself to people who didn't know my situation. And that having that on my back as a strong statement from where I came from was really important to me.